Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Life Debates.
Well, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm James MacPherson with Danica, Giorgio and Caleb Bond. It's been a massive news day today.
Oh.
I'm curious, were you two glued to the news all day, or did you get out a little bit and
I'd say a bit of both.
clear your head?
I had to clear my head before obviously I came on our beautiful show. But no, just huge. Breaking news everywhere today. Huge. And if you're in Victoria, whoa.
We'll get into all of that shortly.
The news is, isn't it?
Did you get out and about today, Caleb?
No, I didn't clear my head. I just let it become chock full of all this gear, you know, so I can come here and tell you all the things I've been thinking about all day. I mean, this is a wonderful part of doing this show, right, is that you get to think about things all day and then instead of, you know, going home after work to have some sort of significant other who'd rather you'd shut up, I get to come and talk to thousands of people every night and they actually want to listen. It's amazing.
Did Caleb just refer to us as his significant others?
I mean, this is a big moment.
I think he did.
I'm shocked. Thank you.
Well, it was a big news day. Here's what's coming up tonight. Victoria, of course, has a new unelected Premier. But will this unelected Premier be any different to the last unelected Premier? We'll get into all of the Labor chaos and confusion, thanks Anthony Albanese, shortly. Armed police will guard Britain's largest gay pride parade after police confirmed the Berlin event was attacked by an Islamist. And do we need to save our pubs? With young people swapping schooners for squats, bar stools for barbells, and a Friday night at the local for a Friday night counting protein grams, is the Aussie pub an endangered species? We'll get to all of that shortly, but first, One Nation is set to announce more than 70 candidates for the Victorian election after receiving 1,200 applications from people eager to represent the party. Here's the One Nation leader taking questions from a live studio audience here on News24 just a few moments ago.
Can I tell you, for Victoria, we've had 1,200 expressions of interest in Victoria for candidates. The seat of Farrell that we won, we had 81 expressions of interest for that. The federal so far, 1,500.
Now, Pauline Hanson declined to nominate One Nation's Victorian leader, but to be fair, the Victorian Labor government only nominated their leader today. So, Caleb, I think we can excuse her on that one.
It may be a fair point, actually. I have to say, I think Pauline Hanson handled herself pretty well through that hour. Notwithstanding, I think it was, you know, largely people who were probably of a One Nation mind to begin with who were talking to her. So that's always going to be an easier crowd than it is to talk to a hostile one. But these are the moments, I think, that become important for Pauline Hanson, because you look at the lead up to any election, right? And we always have the people's forums where people get a chance to come and ask questions of the opposition leader and the Prime Minister, or in the case of a state election, the opposition leader and the Premier. And other TV networks do things like this as well. And it's in those moments where you get an idea of the character of a leader. You know, it's one thing to talk about the policy and you can sort of repeat stuff by rote learning as to what a policy is and then refuse to veer from that. But you get an idea of how a leader deals with real people, which is something that Pauline Hanson is very good at. And you get an insight into how their mind works in those situations. And what I saw in that hour was not Pauline Hanson doing the typical politician thing, which is repeating by rote learning what she's heard. She actually engaged with the questions. She listened to the questions and addressed them directly, not, you asked this question, so let me kind of veer off in this direction so I can give you the answer I want to give you based on something else. She just said, OK, you told me that, here's what I think about it, which I think is great. This is a large part of why people like Pauline Hanson and why they like One Nation, because they see a different version of politics. One of the other things she was asked about, an example of the way she treated all of this, she was asked about welcomes to country. Now, of course, we broadly know what Pauline Hanson thinks about welcomes to country, but she expanded upon what she would do in government.
I think it's divisive, and I do not believe in having welcome to country, and it wouldn't be... you can't stop people if businesses want to do it, all right? But in government departments, I wouldn't have a welcome to country on the bottom of their literature or their sheets of paper they put out or on government websites. And I wouldn't be having it in educational systems, schools. I'd shut that all down.
You know, someone's asked a question, she gives a real answer.
Yeah.
And I know some people are critical, I suppose, of this aspect of One Nation, that they don't have, you know, long-form formulated policies written down on paper yet. But that's actually a lot of what people like about the mob, whether you like it or not. They like that stuff, and I think she showed that well this evening.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of Pauline Hanson's biggest strengths is that she can be very relatable and very personable when she speaks. In that sort of an environment, many other politicians would go with their spin lines. I mean, if that was Anthony Albanese doing a Q&A, you would hear Labor, 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 and you'd hear the same old policies. He'd be talking at you, not talking with you. But I do think that that's one of Pauline Hanson's strengths. And even tonight, she was asked about the fish and chip shop that she used to own. Do you still go back there? Have you been back there? And she has. She said that she has gone back since. It's very special to her two children. So as a woman who used to be a small business owner, she can relate to the business issues that are going on right now in Australia, whereas a lot of politicians have no business experience whatsoever, and why anyone would want to go into business right now under Labor. A few points that I would make. Firstly, I found her comments about candidates in Victoria to be very, very interesting. We've got a situation now where parties are crying out for membership and for people to sign up, to go on board. And the fact that One Nation are not having any issues in Victoria, I thought that was interesting. However, it has to be the right sort of candidates that they sign up. There was a viewer who put in an email and said that they were unimpressed by the candidates. I can't remember which election it was. And they said that it just deterred them from ever voting One Nation. And I do think that that has been a real sore point for One Nation. Their candidates, I don't know what's going on with their vetting process, but some of them you just think, where on earth did you pull this bloke or woman from? So I think that's the big one. But Pauline, through and through, was Australian first. Her comments about the welcomes to country. But the big one, of course, was migration, and continues to be migration. And here is her addressing it tonight.
Got about 150,000 people who are homeless in Australia, and there's no potential for the younger generation coming through and owning their own home. So everything comes down, housing is supply and demand. Now those people, skilled migrants, and I'll give you these figures. Between 22 and 23, we brought in 739,000 people. Of that, and they said, oh, we need skilled migrants for our housing. Of that, only 51,605 were actually skilled. And of that, only 1,800 in the construction industry. It's been a scam. We've got to be smart. So many people from around the world want to come to Australia. We can be selective in who we bring in. People who are going to help us build our nation with productivity, not drag us down, end up on our welfare system.
Well, exactly. And we can't just have our borders open to anyone, and we can't just let anybody in, because what we have seen is that some people have been let in who just are completely incompatible with our own values. So I thought it was a really interesting discussion, and I thought that she came across very strongly in her wording, very, very strongly tonight.
It's funny because so many in the media try to paint Pauline Hanson as a bigot, as a hater, as divisive. Then you sit and listen to her for an hour interacting with people, and as you said, her people skills are actually a strength, which is the opposite you would think if you listen to certain segments of the media. Just in terms of their candidates, or the people applying, 1,200 people applying to run for One Nation in Victoria, I heard a little rumour the other week that, you know how there's police shortages in Victoria? Well, if all the police applying to be One Nation candidates in Victoria become candidates, then they'll really have some police shortages. Because apparently there's quite a lot of police officers saying, hey, I'd be a One Nation candidate. So make of that what you will.
Wow.
But they're not short of possibilities. The question will be, and it's an ongoing one, can they get those decisions right and get some quality people who will not only be quality but will be there long term? That's the big question mark.
Indeed. And can they get the infrastructure up and running for a state election that is 4 months away?
Yeah.
Because, you know, as you noted before, which we'll talk about in just a moment, of course, Labor only decided on their leader for the election today. But, of course, the advantage Labor has is that they're in government and they have a machine and all this stuff that One Nation simply doesn't have.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, I mean, you can look at South Australia as an example, where on first preferences, One Nation actually did better than the Liberals did, but they won fewer seats than the Liberals did, and of course got nowhere near forming a government, let alone the opposition. They were a couple of seats short of being able to do that. In fact, I think they've got 4 and the Libs have got 5 in the lower house, but the Libs have more in the upper house. So they couldn't form opposition even though they had a stronger primary vote. So if they want to make a serious go of it in Victoria, they really need to hit the ground running now and announce a leader and get out there and campaign on it. And this was one of the things that was used today by Ben Carroll, the new Premier of Victoria, when he said why he needed to take the job, that the best chance of stopping a one-nation Liberal government was Labor. Now, yeah, OK, I kind of guess that's the case, isn't it? What you really mean is that you are the guy to do the job, not the woman who had it until this morning, Jacinta Allen. Now, of course, we talked last night about the fact that Jacinta Allen was digging her heels in. She didn't want to go. There was a meeting this morning at 10 a.m. She finally announced, she made the decision that she was going to resign. Now, keep in mind, Jacinta Allen could have dug her heels in further and nominated herself for the spill, which would have meant that they would have to go off and do a vote of the rank-and-file members of the Labor Party. And if they'd done that, it would have dragged this thing out for another 6 weeks. And she was considering doing this. But in the end, she decided, oh, well, I suppose the time has come, I must go.
After speaking with my colleagues overnight, I've made the difficult decision to step aside as leader of the Victorian State Parliamentary Labor Party and as Premier of Victoria. I was prepared to put my record and my plan to a ballot of members, as our rules allow. I believe I would have won.
I believe I would have won, but I'm not going to do it. Interesting, isn't it? Nevertheless, Ben Carroll then becomes Premier, not without a little bit of an interjection from the Attorney-General along the way, who was then going to nominate herself so that they'd have to go through this 6 weeks process anyway. But negotiation amongst the factions, they sorted that problem out so they could choose a Premier today. They then rushed Ben Carroll off to the acting Governor of Victoria, because the Governor's over at the Commonwealth Games. They get it all through, and here he is, finally. He becomes the Premier. He posted a little message that had been pre-recorded, obviously, on social media, basically the minute after he became the Premier today.
I am honoured and humbled to have been elected unanimously by my colleagues to serve as the new Premier of Victoria. Yesterday, they asked me to put my hand up to lead our party, and I agreed. This was not an easy decision. Our government needs to go in a new direction on integrity, on community safety, and on the economy. As Premier, I will deliver that new direction.
And what does that new direction look like, Mr. Carroll?
I am not Daniel Andrews. I am not Jacinta Allen. I will do things differently because different times require a new approach.
Geez, that dagger is quite something, isn't it? I thought it was really pointed that he said that. I mean, he is saying, after serving, of course, both of those premiers and being Deputy Premier to Jacinta Allen, who was Daniel Andrews' pick to replace him anyway, he says, I'm not Jacinta Allen. I'm not Daniel Andrews. In other words, I don't want a bar of their legacy. I'm here to set my own agenda. Because, of course, he can see that this is what has eventually become such a problem for the Labor Party in Victoria. And I thought the speech he gave when he rocked up to that press conference was pretty well as good as you could expect it to be. I think he spoke quite well. He hit the right points. He said we're going to have a Royal Commission. I'm not Daniel Andrews. I'm not Jacinta Allen. He said the right stuff, but it then kind of came undone once he started being asked questions. Because, of course, this is the guy who a month ago said, you know, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to be rolling the Premier. You know, I'm so proud to tell my young daughter that I'm supporting this female Premier of Victoria. And then, of course, he was asked, would you look Jacinta Allen in the eye and tell her that you're not going to roll her? And he looked her in the eye and said, yes, I'm not going to do it. So, of course, that was the first thing he was asked about today. And he just couldn't let go of this phrase.
You've promised someone something to their face. How can you now promise things to Victorians?
The truth is, the circumstances changed. The circumstances changed.
You declared your loyalty to her. At that moment, you were loyal to her?
And the circumstances have changed.
Had the Premier not lost support of her colleagues last month?
The circumstances changed. The circumstances changed.
The circumstances have changed. Who knew? I mean, hey, look, that was the point at which I thought, oh, mate, you are in a bit of trouble here. Like, he looked the piece when he came out, but the minute they put pressure on him, he was just like, what do I do?
And the problem is he can't explain what those circumstances were. We all know what they were. It's called the polling. That's the only thing that really changed. I think, was it yesterday that the polls said Jacinta Allen had a dissatisfaction rating of 71%.
Yeah, was it 75? Yeah, around
75%, whatever it was. She was deeply unpopular. This is one of the problems that he has. He says, I'm not Daniel Andrews, I'm not Jacinta Allen, which raises the question, well, what was wrong with Daniel Andrews? What was wrong with Jacinta Allen? Please tell us what the problem was. When he says we need a new direction with integrity, is he saying that they were not integrous? That's why they need a new direction? Because if they were integrous, why a new direction with integrity? The same goes for community safety. The same goes with the economy. And in terms of a new direction and integrity, I mean, this will plague him right through to the election, won't it, Danica? That you said to your daughter, I'm proud to support this woman, and you looked her in the eye and you promised that you'd be with her through thick and thin. Now he wants to chart a new direction for integrity. You're kidding me. You failed at the first hurdle. And the other thing that amused me was that, as Caleb said, he talked about the only thing standing between Victoria and a Liberal One Nation government is Labor. Well, you know, as kids used to say back at school, duh, Freddie. I mean, obviously, you're going to either vote Labor or Liberal One Nation. And essentially, he's saying that he needed to rescue the Labor Party from the voters. Yeah. And that's his rationale for taking on the leadership. He's not there because crime is bad, the economy's a disaster, there's corruption everywhere. He's there because if I don't take the reins, we're probably going to lose the next election.
But so what I didn't understand about his speech was that he's tried desperately to distance himself from Jacinta Allen and Dan Andrews. But Ben Carroll was also in both of their cabinets.
He was sitting at the big table.
He was sitting at the big table. So he's talking about a royal commission into the construction sector. Well, why now has he only started speaking out about the construction sector when this has been going on for months now, plaguing Jacinta Allen, but only now he's got a problem with it? To me, it just sounds like this is just putting lipstick on a pig, because really, this is the same party with a different leader. What difference is it going to make between now and the election? I'm not so sure. What really bothered me, though, about Jacinta Allen's speech was that she had a crack that this was being done to her because she was a woman. And she gave this parting comment where she said along the lines of, I just want to let women know that if you want to go into politics, don't be deterred by what has happened to me today. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a second. Firstly, Jacinta Allen has not been able to define what a woman is throughout her entire premiership. And secondly, playing the gender card even until the last day, this is typical out of the left's playbook, that she thinks this has happened to her just because of her gender. No. Has she had a look at the polling? Has she gone through her own policies to see how diabolical she is? But of course, it's the left's playbook. Third point I would make now, it's going to be interesting to see how the opposition changes its strategy. I noticed they've done a television blitz tonight. A lot of them were on News24 throughout our various programs throughout the evening. And their line is saying, well, the Labor Party should have waited till the election and should have given the people a chance to vote, because, of course, now this is the second Labor leader who has been put into that position without it coming from the people. So that seems to be their line. I'll be very, very curious to see how it changes their strategy, because it was very easy to plug at Jacinta Allen because everything was such a failure. So watch this space. But I think a very good day for the Liberal Party in general.
Good day for Victoria in general, I would say.
A good day for Victoria in general. Yes, that's it. Moira Deeming, the very controversial Liberal MP, has today announced that she is quitting the Liberal Party, but she will sit on the crossbench, of course, after a string of incidents that occurred after she made those accusations against Matthew Guy, that he had put her into a headlock. Even though he was cleared of any wrongdoing, here's a vision there, he was cleared of any wrongdoing, but then her ongoing refusal to apologise. So what a day to pull the pin. She posted this quote. She said, "Today I have resigned from the Parliamentary Liberal Party and will sit with the crossbench as an independent. I was elected to fight for freedom, fair laws and families, to save our state from the endemic corruption, crushing debt and the rising crime crisis. Labor has got to go. I remain fully committed to seeing that through. Thank you to those who have supported me." Now, my first thought when I saw this, I thought, she's picked one of the biggest days in Victorian politics to pull the pin. She's had a long time to pull the pin. You remember the Liberal Party, after this incident happened, after Matthew Guy was cleared, they had that meeting which she tried to stop, and I think successfully she did try to stop, but she's picked this big day to try and make herself relevant in the headlines. It was very relevance deprivation syndrome, if you ask me. And I actually think it looks poorly on her that she's chosen this day. It makes her out to be almost a sore loser. But she had to go. There was no other options. She brought the Liberal Party into disrepute, I feel, and right now the Liberal Party need to focus on the brand and getting through to November. Now that Ben Carroll is the Labor leader, they've just got to go full gun-ho, for lack of a better word now, without the dead wood that was accompanying the party. It is such a shame because Moira Deeming spoke about women's rights. Moira Deeming was at the front of this argument. Moira Deeming knows what a woman is, understands female biology very well, something Jacinta Allen never was able to do. It is really, really a shame, but she did it to herself.
Well, unfortunately, there are two things she doesn't understand. That's when to give it up and timing.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted that she decided to do this today, because I thought, why would you do it today? So, like, it's one of the biggest news days in Victorian politics since Daniel Andrews left 3 odd years ago and they replaced him with Jacinta Allen, right? And so you go, OK, there's only two reasons you do it today. One is you think that you are so important that it will generate headlines and it'll be as big as the Jacinta Allen thing, and, you know, on a day that the Liberal Party sort of wants to make hay while the sun shines, it'll take some of that shine off of them, which is just extraordinary. Or you really wanted to bury the fact that you were leaving the Liberal Party.
They're the two options.
And given the way she has behaved since, of course, Matthew Guy was cleared and dug her heels in, somehow I don't think it's the latter. I think she thought it was going to really work today. I'm not sure it's worked out that way.
Well, perusing the papers late this afternoon, I mean, it was a story, but
it's not the big story.
Barely a story. Most newspapers gave it, what, 8, 9 paragraphs and really didn't have much to say other than she's become an independent, and everybody sort of read it and yawned because we all figured that's probably what was going to happen. I think you're right. I think she thought this will be big news and this will dominate the Liberal side of the story today rather than Jess Wilson's response to the new Labor leader. And I think Moira Deeming may have discovered today that she's become fairly irrelevant now to the political cycle. Good on her. We'll always, I think, be appreciative of what she did with regards women's rights. She certainly gave it a lot of publicity and gave it momentum. But she proved to be a bit of a firecracker, didn't she? A big, bright explosion and then a massive fizzle as it all fell away.
Absolutely. And, yeah, it is a shame because she was at the forefront of the women's rights movements and I think one of the very first politicians to come out so strongly talking about it, when a lot of politicians would hide away from talking about what is a woman and still do to this day. But, she did it to herself.
It's one of those interesting lessons in life, right? It always amuses me how the media want to ask Bruce Springsteen, what do you think of US politics? Because, well, he plays guitar well, therefore he must be you know, an authority on everything else.
They should ask him what he thinks of Ben Carroll.
Indeed. I think with Moira Deeming, because she made such a mark when it came to women's rights, everyone assumed she was this great political operator, whereas it turns out she just had something to say about one issue and
really good point,
didn't have much insight into much else.
Yeah.
And everyone went, oh, that's typically the way, isn't it? Most people aren't brilliant at everything. They might really hit it out of the park on one thing and then prove to be pretty average on the rest of it. Let's change topic a little bit to one of Caleb's favourite subjects, and that is the pub. He's always trying to get us there after the show because the local pub is where you go to drink beer, tell lies, talk politics and make questionable decisions. It's an institution and it's a part of Aussie life, but in the UK, pubs might not be around that much longer. Between the year 2000 and 2025, 26% of pubs closed down. That's a quarter of all UK pubs closed within the last 5 years. Just in the first 3 months of this year, 161 pubs closed down in 3 months. That's an average of 2 pubs a day, every day for the first 3 months of this year closing. Emily Nicholas, she's a senior lecturer in sociology at the University of York. She's got a theory as to why pubs are closing their doors. She says Gen Z or Gen Z, which is it?
Z.
Gen Z. Z is the American
Not in America,
one, right? Gen Z, that's those aged or born between 1997 and 2012, is increasingly looking for new ways to socialise, she said. They're placing more value on experiences centred around community connection and well-being rather than nights out where alcohol is the main focus. In other words, they're preferring gym to drinking, and if they are going to drink, they'd probably have a piccolo or a latte at their local cafe than join Caleb at the bar.
Or a matcha.
For a scooter or a matcha. What's a matcha?
It's like it's a Japanese green tea, slow-release caffeine.
You should see that Danica loves the matcha.
Yeah.
She goes to this cafe she goes to regularly, and they serve it with a little teddy bear on top.
Oh, it's cute, little Japanese teddy
I know.
bear.
This is the weird stuff that young people do now instead of going to the pub.
Would you rather a matcha or a scooter with Caleb?
A matcha.
There you go. That's why pubs are shutting down. People like you, Danica.
I know, exactly. Well, Danica doesn't drink at all, so maybe she can explain in a moment why that is. But on the whole, I think this is pretty sad, really. I mean, the pub has been an important cultural institution and a community touchstone in Western countries like Australia and the UK for a very long time. And there was a study done out of the US which ended up being a much better study than they ever thought it would be. But they were tracking the drinking habits of so-called heavy young drinkers, right? And they started taking data before COVID hit. And then they kept taking data through COVID and then out the other side of COVID. And what they found, this was in the US, what they found was that the drinking habits of young people declined during COVID. They were drinking less during COVID, and that continued after COVID. But the researchers' main finding was that the majority of that drop-off in drinking was on the weekend. And fundamentally, it was because, you know, during COVID you couldn't go out. And so young people stopped going and seeing their mates at the pub or the club or whatever it was on the weekend. And then they just continued that habit after COVID. And so not only were they not drinking, they'd stopped going and seeing their mates as well. And you can look at all the data on loneliness. It's gone up significantly post-COVID. I think a lot of people formed different habits during COVID and they've stuck to them. And unfortunately, it's meant they're not drinking as much because they're not going to the pub and seeing their mates. So which is worse, you know, the deleterious effects of alcohol? I mean, that hadn't done me much harm. Or the deleterious... Really? Well, what are you saying, Danica? Or the deleterious effects of not going and seeing your mates. I'd argue that's the worst of the evils.
Why can't you go out and not drink? Why do you need alcohol around you to go out and socialise?
And they are socialising. They're going to cafes. Cafe culture now.
Well, it's a cafe culture. Why do you need to have a glass? This is the problem. And I actually think it's a very Australian culture, right? I feel like there's an Aussie belief that you can't go out and socialise unless you've got a drink in your hand of alcohol. I really do believe that. And as somebody who is a non-drinker, that's what I feel when I go out, that if you don't have something in your hand, well, she can't possibly be having a good night.
So
and I would say I'm a bloody hoot when I go out. Let me tell you that.
Okay.
Right?
Well, the first point I'll make is that for time immemorial, alcohol has... I've yet to test this. Alcohol has been...
Sorry, I'm just thinking of Margaret Thatcher, who said, if you have to tell people you're a lady, you're probably not. If you have to tell everyone you're a bloody hoot, you're probably not a bloody hoot.
I tell you that I have a very, very good time when I go out, and I do not have alcohol in my hand, and I can keep up with those who are drunk.
So alcohol has been a social lubricant for time immemorial. Like, that's just an unavoidable fact. It always has been. But why do you not drink, Danica? Why do you choose not to?
I don't like the way that it makes me feel.
OK, well, that's
fine.
So
I haven't had a drink, I would say, in about 2.5 years. And I haven't wanted to drink alcohol. Has it stopped me from socialising when everybody else has got a drink around them? No, I could not give a toss if other people are drinking because I'm comfortable enough in my own skin to go out and have a good time. I don't need alcohol around me, and I don't care if others are drinking or not. I actually think this is wonderful that less young adults are drinking because people are more health conscious. Don't we want people to look after their health? Don't we want people to turn to exercise, healthy eating habits, socialising at the cafe, than drinking themselves silly because they are having a bad day at work, they are stressed out and they're turning to the bottle at night. So I applaud people for taking this step to improve their health. I just do not see that there's anything wrong with that. Secondly, the cost of drinking on a weekend is ridiculous. You fork out hundreds of
blame
dollars.
the government for that.
Yeah.
Well, you can blame government for that, but I don't see why we have to, oh, well, people aren't drinking anymore, this is terrible. We should be saying, thank goodness we've got something right in the health sector.
Thank goodness all those publicans are going out of business. Thank goodness all those people in the wine industry are losing their jobs.
So you would rather people be drunk, disorderly, spending a lot of money on alcohol, not making themselves well.
Are you
saying
saying...
a lot of people that do have a problem with alcohol, Caleb...
You're suggesting you can't go to the pub and have a drink and not walk out of the place blind drunk?
No, but what I'm saying is to you, your argument is, oh, well, publicans are going out of business. I would...
Well, yeah, clearly they are.
I feel bad for publicans, and I do feel bad for publicans, but I would argue that the cost of your health is more important than anything else.
OK, but for most people... who would go to the pub and have 2 or 3 beers or 2 glasses of wine, that's a very healthy, happy thing for them to do.
That's fine. That's their prerogative. That's fine. But I'm talking about the study that said that a majority of people will go out and they will not drink alcohol anymore. And you said that was a problem. I'm telling you that is not a problem. I don't see what the problem is.
Okay, so you're saying that it's going to avoid a whole lot of people getting blotto, and I think Caleb's trying to make the point.
Most
No, not just blotto. Not just blotto. For their general health and well-being, that they're focusing on getting up early at 6 a.m. to go for a run, so they're not plastered from the night before, so therefore they're drinking less.
You keep going back to all these people being plastered. I'm saying most people don't go out and get plastered. They go out and have a few drinks.
I am not saying that they're going out to get plastered. I'm saying that they are looking after their health more. They're more health conscious. They're calling it a night earlier. What's the problem with that?
Well, they're not necessarily calling it a night earlier. They're not drinking at all. They're giving up on drinking altogether.
You can't be at the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning if you've been out till 3 a.m. I don't know. Well, maybe
I don't know.
When you're younger, I don't know. But
how healthy is a matcha or a matcha or whatever?
A matcha is healthy. A matcha is a very healthy drink. It's a Japanese green tea. It's a slow-release caffeine. I quit coffee two years ago, and I've been on matcha.
I was going to say, most young people have given up on the beer and they're now just addicted to caffeine.
Well, it's, or other substances. I think, look, you reckon they're giving up on the grog, and many of them probably are. But I'd be looking at what other substances they're putting into their systems. They might come in powdered form and go up their noses. I don't think young people have necessarily given up on taking mind-altering substances. They've just found other ones that aren't taxed and are illegal. And which would you prefer they were using? The illegal product or the regulated legal product that we make a lot of tax on?
There's quite a few products being used at the gym, I would suggest.
Indeed, that may not be exactly great for your health either. I mean, you see some of those people in the gym. I'm not sure they're too worried about their health. I think they're more worried about their vanity than anything else. Now, let's talk about a serious story from overseas. We talked to you last night, of course, about this terror attack in Berlin, where a guy who had tried to join ISIS, he'd gone off to Lebanon, tried to join ISIS there, got locked up there, then went back to Germany. Well, over the weekend, he drove through a crowd of people at a Pride festival, gay Pride festival. Would you believe how the New York Times reported this? They had this headline, and it was, I think it was up yesterday, but we missed it. But it says, car plows into crowd at Berlin Pride event in suspected terror attack. as though there were no man driving the car. A man who tried to join ISIS driving car ploughs into crowd, I think would be a little more accurate. You're kind of burying the lead there, I would say, to the New York Times. But because of this now in the UK, they've decided that they have to bolster up their police presence for a Pride event there. They're going to have masses of armed police now because, of course, they are concerned about the possibility of an Islamist attack happening in Britain as it happened in Berlin. And this comes as a man has been arrested in Paris for stabbing 3 women. And according to The Australian, they've reported that the identity of the suspect and his motive were not immediately clear, but local media reports that he claimed to have been sent by Allah to kill women. And the French Interior Minister said the motive of the attack remains unknown. Police could not verify the identity of the attacker, whose declarations were incoherent while he was being arrested, warning, however, against jumping to conclusions as to his motives. I mean, we see a bit of a pattern here, don't we? Oh, it was a car that ploughed into the crowd, not an Islamist who tried to join ISIS. Oh, you know, we don't know the motives, even though witnesses are clearly telling the media that they heard him say that Allah sent him to kill women. I mean, we're kind of burying the lead here.
The most astonishing response to these Islamist attacks in Europe over the past week, to me, was from Wes Streeting, the new Defence Minister in the UK government. He said that the attack on the Pride parade in Berlin showed why Pride events are still necessary. That was what he got out of it. So the answer is more Pride events. I'd suggest maybe the answer is dealing with your migration policy and your open borders. He went on to warn that, quote unquote, many people don't accept diversity. That's what he got out of this. Right. Interesting, Danica, that he went for the phrase many people. And you've got to guess who the many people are that don't accept diversity. Yeah. Talk about gutless. And if you want to stand up for LGBTQ people, then call a spade, but don't, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hint at it. Address what's actually happening. But just to say, well, this just shows we need more Pride events because many people don't. Gutless and does nothing to address the issue. Yeah. There'll continue to be attacks whilst ever they live in denial. And just very quickly, because I know we've got to get to a break, I love it that now they're saying, oh, it's all right, we've got armed police that are going to be patrolling Britain's Pride Parade, and we've got bollards up. Yeah, the DEI bollards go up again because we're not dealing with the true issue of radical Islam. Exactly. All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll look at what the papers are saying about Victoria and what comes now. That's next. Well, as you can imagine, tomorrow's newspapers will be dominated by the leadership change in Victoria. Danica, you're across all of it. I am. Herald Sun, stop this train wreck. Oh, how's that? Dan's shadow over party room turmoil. Who is Ben inside Carroll's rise to power, and how Andrew's Alan Raine corrupted Victoria? That's their headline tomorrow. And then over in The Australian, ALP's bold new vision: clean up its own mess. And then there's that infamous quote now, I am not Daniel Andrews, I am not Jacinta Allen. They're the headlines tomorrow. But let's take a look at this big one. It's an exclusive there. Brown settles on Higgins row. The Commonwealth has settled the explosive lawsuit brought by former Liberal staffer Fiona Brown, sparing former Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his senior advisors the embarrassment of a trial over allegations they prevented her from responding to false allegations by Brittany Higgins that destroyed her life. Miss Brown had revealed how she was made to take the fall for the Morrison government as it sought to deflect Labor's false accusations of a cover-up, ruthlessly cast aside by her Liberal Party colleagues when she became, to them, a liability. And look, let's not forget, I mean, every single person who has been somehow involved in this whole saga, their lives have been tipped upside down. But you've got to spare a thought for Fiona Brown, whose career she completely lost, and she was not able to defend herself and defend the vile accusations that were being levelled her way up until only late last year. So this is big that the Commonwealth has settled.
now, and I hope that she's able to get on with her life.
More money that the taxpayer has had to fork out because of this whole sorry saga. You know, the $2.4 million that went to Brittany Higgins, this with Fiona Brown. I mean, the whole thing was just handled so appallingly.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's probably better for Ms Brown in some ways that it's settled, because it means she won't have to go through a protracted public sort of playing out of all this stuff again. But for us, the taxpayer, it robs us of an opportunity to see inside, you know, how the sausage was made and get some potential questions answered. And so we're left here wondering, what was actually going on? It's our money that's been spent, and we get no insight whatsoever into what really happened.
Yep. There were a lot of competing agendas in that whole thing, right?
Oh, it was bad.
It wasn't just what was happening that you could see. It was all the things underneath and the different moving parts. What an absolute mess. Let's go to the front page of tomorrow's Daily Telegraph. Burbs go kaboom, reads the headline. Live hand grenades, automatic rifles, and enough ammunition to service a small army have been uncovered in a safe house in Sydney's suburbs, in what police say is a worrying sign, that's a bit of an understatement, of the high-powered violence in which underworld gangs are now willing to engage. Apparently, police conducted a fairly routine search. They were looking for a prohibited weapon earlier this morning, that's Tuesday, when they uncovered a whole lot of cocaine, a whole lot of cash, and a lot of ammo, a lot of guns, and all these grenades. In fact, the bomb squad had to be called to make sure that nothing went kaboom in the burbs.
It's kind of scary that they're just loitering around the burbs.
Yeah, and as I said, this is organised crime, so not great.
No.
But thank God the police found it.
Thank God that they got it in time. I do like that headline too, Burbs go kaboom.
It's not bad.
Well, let's hope they don't go kaboom.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact they've become so brazen now. See, I wonder, because a lot of this organised crime now is heavily linked to the illicit tobacco market. And it also, it was on the front of at the bottom of the Herald Sun that we showed you before. But another story today that's kind of disappeared into the midst with everything else that's gone on. Kazem Hamad, who is the guy who was basically running the illicit tobacco market, particularly in Victoria, has today been jailed for life in Iraq. So they've broken that up a little bit, but, you know, surely a lieutenant will take over and that'll all continue on. But part of me wonders whether, because a lot of this organised crime is now linked to illicit tobacco, which is so brazen in its nature, like you just walk into a shop and buy the stuff, like no one's really hiding that they're committing crimes all day, every day, that they've now taken this laissez-faire attitude into the way that they run the rest of their operations. And it's like, oh, well, if we've got a whole bunch of grenades in a shed in the back of who cares? I mean, you know, we're just doing what we want. I mean, there was a case recently of someone in Sydney who was a relative of someone who was involved in one of these gangs, himself not a criminal, and someone tried to shoot him up on the school run at the front of the school. He's got nothing to do with it, right?
But what you're describing sounds like that whole broken windows phenomena that, you know, was it Rudy Giuliano in New York? If you don't repair a broken window straight away, it just encourages more crime. If you don't crack down on illicit tobacco, it sends a signal to those involved in the trade that, oh, well, no one's paying much attention, we can get away with that. What else can we get away with? And so you end up with crime running rampant.
And it's made them a huge amount of money in the process as well. On the front of the Courier Mail tomorrow, some really cheery news. Rate pain is coming. Reserve Bank boss Michelle Bullock has delivered the starkest warning yet that more mortgage pain is on the way for homeowners, saying a delay in hikes would only make the situation worse. The warning comes as crucial inflation data is set to be released today, that is tomorrow, Wednesday, and is expected to show the cost of a basket of goods is worsening. It doesn't get any cheerier, does it? I mean, frankly, the federal government at some point just has to take responsibility for the fact that they were warned so many times that government spending was a large pusher of inflation. They've done nothing about it. We read the story last night about 7% they were warned about. And here we are being told, oh, well, your mortgage is going to go up again. It's the people who can least afford it.
Yeah, well, they're not taking responsibility. They're already getting it out there. It could go to 7%, inflation that is, and it's all due to what's happening in the Middle East. So the government trying to get ahead of this so their excuse is already ready. Meanwhile, the RBA, what choice do they have?
No, well, that's it. I mean, Michelle Bullock has been warning about government spending. The economists were warning. And it's just very easy for Jim to say, oh, no, you know, it was the war. Just like, remember, he blamed the Ukraine war going back a few years ago. He loves to blame outside factors for record government spending. So I'm sure we're about to hear the same lines trotted out by Spin Jim very soon.
Well, if you can find someone else, I suppose it's, you know, politics 101, isn't it? If you can find someone else to blame, you find someone else to blame. But it doesn't make life any easier for us, and that is really what they should be focused on. That story is also on the front of the Advertiser tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be one of the big stories people are talking about, if we don't have to talk about Jacinta Allen and co. But also another story which we touched on last night, but a tragic one on the front of the Advertiser. Why did Mum fall? Police at a loss to explain how and why Helena and her babies came to die. Helena Wright, 36, pulled up at a cliff top in Port Macdonald on Monday morning, left her car running and somehow fell to her death, along with her 3-month-old son and her 23-month-old daughter. Police are baffled as to how the well-regarded mother and her children came to die. The baby boy's body remained missing in rough seas yesterday, and the lifeline number is on the screen there, 13 11 14, if that brings up any issues for you. But what an awful story, and for a small community like Port Macdonald to have something like that happen, it really puts shockwaves through a town.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, a spear fisherman is attacked by a shark, and he records the whole thing on video. We'll show you after this. Welcome back to the program. Henry Gibbs is a Kiwi. He's also a fishing content creator, which means he films himself spearfishing and then he posts the content online. Well, earlier this month, he got a little more content than he was counting on when he filmed himself being attacked by a shark. The shark bit him on the leg. He managed to keep the leg, not before he was operated on 4 times. The good news is the number of followers on his social media has gone through the roof. When you've got content like that on your social media, you will get followers. That's a heavy price to pay, though.
That is a very heavy price to pay. I wasn't sure what we were going to see when we rolled that vision. It was a lot more tamer than I thought.
Well, we try to keep it tame on the Late Debate. We don't want to upset viewers.
Well, you want to see the leg come off and the whole shebang. I mean, you know.
How fast did that shark come at him?
It's insane, isn't it?
That's actually frightening, though.
Like, if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever lied awake at night. You know, you have those shower thoughts and things. It's like, what would happen if this happened? And like, I've never had the thought. No. You don't just contemplate.
I don't think about what would happen if I got attacked by a shark.
Well, no, that's not one I've had. But you think about weird things from time to time. What would happen if I had a car crash? I don't know. Anyway, if you've ever wondered what it would look like to be attacked by a shark, like the speed at which that thing came at him, I found it fascinating.
Yeah, it's like, can we play it one more time? Watch for the white dot in the distance, and and it's on him in a flash.
There you go. So look at that. And it just comes directly at him through the water. Like, blah, 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 anyway. Yeah.
If you
wanted
to
know, he'd seen
very,
it.
very lucky.
There was
was
nothing
all done.
he could have done.
Yep.
Yeah, no, he was certainly very, very lucky. Let's fun this up a little bit.
You mean shark attacks aren't fun?
No, well, no, they're not, Caleb. You've got a sick mind, so you would enjoy it. At the Commonwealth Games, a cleaner has gone viral for his dance moves while he was mopping up the netball courts. This is CJ Miller, now dubbed Mop Man for obvious reasons. Oh my God, get it. I love that.
I'm not.
What a legend.
I know, I'm not impressed by this. He said, I think the spirit of the music just took me away. That's not true. He owns a dance school, and now he's getting huge publicity for his dance school.
You just wish you
and we've
could
just
dance
bought
like
into
Not
it.
spontaneous. He's not mop man. He's just very good at publicity.
You're just jealous because you got no moves.
Well, that's allegedly what Danica looks like, completely sober on a Saturday night. Before we go tonight, I just want to pay tribute to Bill Oddie, who died overnight at the age of 85. Of course, Bill Oddie from The Goodies. I mean, they just don't make comedy like that anymore, do they? Bring back the old British comedies.
British comedy was
so
best. Of course, most of it wouldn't be allowed to be broadcast.
That's why it's so good.
All right, that's it from us. We'll be back tomorrow night. Stick around. Coming up is the Rita Panahi Show. Good night.